The morning shift alarm echoed through the metal corridors of the Interstellar Biology Institute. The massive space station floated silently in the darkness, orbiting a pale yellow star that belonged to no one. This was neutral space, where species from 1,000 different worlds came to learn about life in all its strange forms. Ji-won stretched in her small dormitory room and looked out the viewport at the stars. She had been at the Institute for 3 months now, one of only 5 humans in a student body of over 2,000 aliens. Back on Earth, she had studied mycology at a university in Seoul. Here, she was learning about life forms that seemed impossible, creatures that breathed methane or ate radiation or lived in the crushing pressure of gas giants. She grabbed her datapad and headed to the cafeteria. The food there was bland and gray, designed to be safe for as many species as possible. It tasted like wet cardboard mixed with vitamins. Ji-won had learned to bring hot sauce in her luggage, though the station security had flagged it as a potential chemical weapon. She had to sign 6 different forms promising not to use it on anyone. The lecture hall was already half full when she arrived. Professor Velthar was setting up his holographic displays at the front of the room. He was from a water world called Aquaria, and his skin was a pale blue-green that glistened under the artificial lights. He had large, bulging eyes that could see in multiple spectrums, and his hands were webbed with long, delicate fingers. His species was known for being extremely careful about everything, especially toxins. Ji-won took her usual seat near the back. Next to her sat Hyuk, a being made entirely of living crystal. He refracted light when he moved, creating small rainbows on the walls. He was quiet and thoughtful, and he took notes by etching them directly into his own body with a small laser tool. On her other side was Bitna, an insectoid from a hive world. She had 6 legs, 4 arms, and compound eyes that could track multiple things at once. Her exoskeleton was a deep purple color, and she clicked softly when she was nervous. She was always nervous in toxicology class. Behind them sat Doyun, a reptilian student with green scales and a long tail that he wrapped around his chair. His species came from a desert world where everything was venomous, so he thought he knew a lot about poisons. He was often wrong, which made him more careful than most students. Professor Velthar cleared his throat, which sounded like water gurgling through pipes. The universal translator built into the ceiling converted his language into something everyone could understand. Good morning, students. Today we will discuss Class 7 toxic fungi from Death World environments. Please ensure your protective gear is properly calibrated before we begin the practical demonstration. Death worlds were planets where evolution had gone into overdrive, creating life forms that were absurdly dangerous. The galactic community had cataloged 237 such worlds. Earth was number 43 on the list, though Ji-won thought it should be ranked much lower. Earth was pretty safe compared to some places she had read about. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a mushroom with a bright purple cap covered in white spots. It looked almost cheerful, like something from a children's story. The image rotated slowly, showing every angle. This specimen is from Venara Theft, Professor Velthar continued. The planet is classified as Death World Category 8. This particular fungus produces a toxin that causes immediate paralysis in 97% of known carbon-based life forms. The paralysis begins in the respiratory system, leading to suffocation within 3 to 4 minutes. There is no known antidote. Bitna's clicking intensified. Hyuk dimmed his inner light, which meant he was concentrating hard. Doyun's tail tightened around his chair. The toxin is absorbed through skin contact. Even touching this mushroom would be fatal to most species in this room. Some species would die simply from inhaling spores. The professor's webbed hands moved carefully over his controls, adjusting the containment field around the hologram. This is why we study these organisms in holographic form first. The real specimens are kept in maximum security containment on level 13, behind triple-shielded doors. Jiwon was only half paying attention. She had brought a small bag of dried mushrooms from the hydroponics bay to class. Yesterday, while working on her botany project, she had noticed some fungi growing in one of the humid sections. They looked similar to oyster mushrooms from Earth, so she had harvested a few and dried them in her room using a small heating unit. They made a decent snack, much better than the cafeteria food. She pulled one out of her bag and popped it into her mouth. It was chewy and had a slightly bitter taste, but not bad. A bit earthy. She had eaten worse during camping trips in the mountains back home. Professor Velthar was now explaining the molecular structure of the toxin. He drew complex diagrams in the air with his fingers, showing how the poison bonded to nerve receptors and blocked neural signals. It was actually pretty interesting, but Jiwon's stomach was rumbling. She ate another mushroom. The professor glanced in her direction. His large eyes could see more than human eyes could, picking up details in the ultraviolet and infrared ranges. He noticed the chewing motion. At first, he assumed she was eating standard nutrition pellets. Many students snacked during lectures, but then he saw the purple tinge on her fingers. His 3 hearts skipped several beats. His skin changed from blue-green to pale white, a sign of extreme stress in his species. "Student Jiwon," he said, and his voice came out strangled. The translator struggled to convey his panic. "What are you consuming?" Jiwon looked up, surprised. Everyone in the class turned to stare at her. She swallowed the mushroom piece she had been chewing and smiled politely. "Just a snack, Professor. I found some mushrooms growing in the hydroponics bay. They looked edible." The classroom went dead silent. Even the usual hum of the ventilation system seemed to pause. Professor Velthar's hands began to shake. Hayek's crystalline body went completely dark. Bitna's clicking stopped entirely, which was somehow more frightening than when it was loud. Doyen's tail fell off his chair and hit the floor with a thud. "Show me," the professor whispered. Jiwon shrugged and reached into her mouth with her finger, picking at something stuck between her teeth. She pulled out a small fragment of purple mushroom cap and held it up. It was about the size of a fingernail, with distinctive white spots on its surface. Professor Velthar made a sound like a drowning animal. His fingers jabbed at his emergency communicator. Red lights began flashing throughout the classroom. An alarm started wailing, the kind reserved for containment breaches and station emergencies. "Medical team to Lecture Hall 7 immediately. We have a code purple. Student has ingested Class 7 toxins. Repeat, code purple." Jiwon looked around in confusion as students scrambled away from her desk. Hayek rolled backward so fast he cracked against the wall. Bitna tried to climb onto the ceiling. Doyun actually fainted, his tail twitching. "Professor, I'm fine," Jiwon said. "It's just a mushroom." "Just a mushroom?" Professor Velthar's voice went up 3 octaves. "That is Venara death cap. You should be dead. Your respiratory system should have shut down." Your Harch, the medical team arrived in less than 2 minutes. They burst through the classroom doors wearing full containment suits that made them look like figures from a nightmare. The suits were bright white with reinforced helmets and independent air supplies. Each team member carried specialized equipment designed to handle the most dangerous biological incidents the galaxy could produce. Dr. Nara led the team. She was an avian species from a world of floating islands, with feathers that shifted colors based on her emotional state. Right now, those feathers were showing bright red and orange, the colors of extreme concern. Her species had evolved excellent medical knowledge because they often fell from great heights and needed to know how to fix themselves quickly. "Where is the contaminated individual?" Dr. Nara's voice came through her suit's speaker, slightly distorted but clear enough. Professor Velthar pointed at Jiwon with a shaking hand. He still looked like he might pass out. His skin had gone from pale white to a sickly gray color. Several other students had already evacuated the classroom. Only Hayuk remained, though he had pressed himself into the farthest corner, making himself as small and transparent as possible. Ji-won raised her hand like a student answering a question. "I'm right here, but really I'm fine. This seems like an overreaction." Dr. Nara approached carefully, as if Ji-won might explode at any moment. She held up a scanning device that looked like a metal wand with glowing blue lines running along its surface. The device hummed as it passed over Ji-won's body, analyzing everything from her cellular structure to her brain activity. "How much did you ingest?" Dr. Nara asked, her translator giving her voice a sharp, bird-like quality. "Maybe 5 or 6 pieces. They're pretty small." Ji-won pulled out her bag and showed the doctor. Inside were about 20 dried mushroom pieces, each one clearly showing the purple cap with white spots. "I dried them yesterday. The texture is better when they're dried, less slimy." Every medical team member took a step backward. One of them, a floating jellyfish-like being in a mobile water tank, actually turned his tank around and headed for the door. Dr. Nara's feathers went from red to purple, which apparently meant she was experiencing a feeling her species had no single word for, but which roughly translated to horrified amazement. "You dried them? You prepared them intentionally? And you consumed multiple pieces?" Dr. Nara's voice kept getting higher. "When did you first consume them?" "About 10 minutes ago. No, wait, I had some at breakfast, too, and a few last night before bed." Ji-won thought about it. "Yeah, probably around 15 pieces total since yesterday evening." Professor Velthar made that drowning sound again. Dr. Nara's scanner was beeping in a way that sounded confused, if a machine could sound confused. The doctor tapped it several times, then ran a second scan, then a third. "This makes no sense," Dr. Nara muttered. She pulled out a different device, this one larger and more complex. It projected a holographic display of Ji-won's internal organs, showing them in real time. Her heart was beating steadily. Her lungs were working perfectly. Her liver was processing something, breaking it down into harmless compounds. Her nervous system showed no signs of damage or disruption. "How are you alive?" Dr. Nara asked. It was not really a question for Ji-won. It was more like the doctor was asking the universe itself. "I have a pretty strong stomach," Ji-won offered. "My grandmother used to take me foraging in the mountains when I was little. We ate all kinds of mushrooms. She said the key was knowing which ones were actually dangerous versus which ones just looked scary. These are actually dangerous." Professor Velthar had found his voice again, though it came out as more of a squeak. "The toxin from one spore is enough to kill a Drellian battle beast. Those creatures weigh 3 tons and have redundant organ systems." Ji-won shrugged. "Define dangerous, I guess." Dr. Nara was scrolling through data on her portable terminal, reading faster than should have been possible. Her eyes could process information at incredible speeds, something her species needed when flying through complicated island formations at high velocity. "I'm pulling up your species file," she said. "Human, correct? From the planet designated as Earth?" "That's right," Ji-won confirmed. "And Earth is classified as—" Dr. Nara's voice trailed off. Her feathers shifted to a dark blue color. That meant deep thought mixed with concern. "Oh no, oh no, no, no." "What?" Professor Velthar struggled to his feet and wobbled over to look at the terminal. His eyes went wide. "Class 9? Earth is a Class 9 death world?" Ji-won blinked. "Is that bad?" "There are only 12 Class 9 death worlds in the entire known galaxy." The professor's voice was getting squeaky again. "They're planets where the survival rate for non-native species is less than 1%. Even microorganisms from Class 9 worlds are dangerous." "That seems harsh," Ji-won said. "Earth is really nice. We have beaches and mountains and forests. Good food, too." Dr. Nara was reading more data, her head tilting in that bird-like way. It says here that Earth has over 10,000 species of plants that produce toxins as defense mechanisms. The dominant species, humans, regularly consume many of these toxins for something called flavor enhancement. Well, yeah, Jiwon agreed. Food is boring without seasoning. We use peppers, herbs, spices, all kinds of stuff. Peppers? Dr. Nara looked up. The database says peppers contain capsaicin, which is classified as a Class 3 chemical irritant. It causes burning sensations and tissue damage. Why would you eat that? Because it tastes good? Jiwon pulled a small bottle from her pocket. It was her hot sauce, the one she had smuggled through station security. Want to try some? Everyone in the room who was still conscious took another step backward. Professor Velthar actually hid behind a desk. That container is labeled as a hazardous substance. Dr. Nara's feathers went full red again. You carry weapons to class? It's not a weapon. It's condiment. Jiwon laughed. Humans put this on food. Even children eat it, though usually milder versions. Dr. Nara made a note on her terminal. Humans allow their young to consume chemical irritants, adding that to the file. The doctor ran another scan, this time focusing on Jiwon's digestive system. The holographic display showed her stomach acids at work, breaking down the mushroom material. The toxins that should have been shutting down her nervous system were being neutralized by her liver enzymes like they were nothing more dangerous than sugar water. Your liver is processing the toxins as if they were normal food, Dr. Nara said slowly. Your species evolved with such aggressive detoxification systems that you can eat things that would be considered biological weapons on most worlds. Humans are very adaptable, Jiwon said proudly. We can live almost anywhere and eat almost anything. This is horrifying, Professor Velthar whispered. Dr. Nara was still reading through the Earth database. Her feathers kept changing colors as she discovered new information. It says here that humans also regularly consume ethanol, which is a solvent that damages organic tissue. They drink it recreationally and call it alcohol. Oh yeah, soju is great, Jiwon said. Though I prefer beer, more refreshing. You drink solvents for refreshment? Dr. Nara repeated flatly. And humans consume caffeine, the doctor continued reading, which is a pesticide that plants evolved to kill insects. Humans use it as a stimulant to increase alertness. They consume it every morning in quantities that would cause cardiac arrest in most species. Coffee is essential, Jiwon agreed. Can't start the day without it. The station cafeteria doesn't serve it, though. Something about it being too dangerous to stock. Professor Velthar emerged from behind the desk. He had regained some of his color, though he still looked shaky. Dr. Nara, what is your medical assessment? The avian doctor closed her terminal and looked at Jiwon for a long moment. Her feathers settled into a neutral green color. The human is in perfect health. Better than perfect, actually. Her vital signs are excellent. There is no toxin damage to any system. Her body is processing the Venara deathcap compounds as easily as I would process water. Dr. Nara paused. I recommend we add a warning to all Death World specimen containers. The warning should read, may be harmless to humans. Jiwon smiled. Does this mean I can keep eating my mushrooms? Absolutely not, Professor Velthar and Dr. Nara said at the same time. Those mushrooms are classified as deadly biological materials, the professor continued. They need to be disposed of properly in the hazardous waste system. Jiwon looked down at her bag of snacks sadly. But they're actually pretty tasty, and I'm hungry. The cafeteria food is terrible. I'll arrange for Earth-compatible rations to be added to your meal plan, Dr. Nara said. In the meantime, please refrain from eating anything you find growing in the station's hydroponics bay. Can I at least finish what I have? Jiwon asked, hopefully. No. She sighed and handed over the bag. As the medical team carefully placed it in a sealed containment unit marked with biohazard symbols, Jiwon couldn't help but think that aliens were overly paranoid about food. News of the incident spread through the Interstellar Biology Institute faster than light-speed communication. By the next morning, everyone on the station knew about the human who had eaten deadly mushrooms and lived. Students whispered about it in corridors. Professors discussed it in their lounges. The station's communication network was flooded with messages. Ji-won became famous overnight, though not in the way she had wanted. Everywhere she went, aliens stared at her. Some looked curious, others looked frightened. A few looked at her like she was a dangerous predator that might attack at any moment. She tried to smile and act friendly, but that seemed to make things worse. Apparently, showing teeth was considered threatening by several species. She was sitting in the cafeteria eating her gray nutrient paste when someone approached her table. It was a being unlike any she had seen before. He had no solid form, existing instead as a swirling cloud of gas contained within a transparent membrane. Colors moved through him constantly, shifting from blue to green to purple. This was Taejin, a student from the Nebula Confederacy. "You are the human," Taejin said. His voice came from a small speaker device that floated in his gaseous form. The translator made him sound smooth and confident, maybe too confident. "I'm Ji-won," she replied, continuing to eat her paste. It tasted like wet paper today. Yesterday, it had tasted like wet cardboard. She wondered if there was a difference, or if she was imagining things. "I have been hearing stories about you," Taejin continued. "They say you consumed Vanara deathcap mushrooms and survived. Multiple pieces, over several meals." "That's right." Ji-won didn't see any reason to deny it. Everyone already knew anyway. Taejin's colors shifted to a reddish hue, which his species used to show aggression or challenge. "I believe the stories are exaggerated. Humans are known to boast about their capabilities. Your kind comes from an insignificant world in a remote sector. You only recently developed space travel. It is unlikely that you possess superior resistance to toxins compared to species with millions of years of evolution." Ji-won put down her spoon. She recognized the tone in Taejin's voice. She had dealt with people like this before, people who thought they were better than everyone else because of where they came from. On Earth, they were called snobs. Apparently, the galaxy had them too. "I'm not boasting," she said calmly. "I just ate some mushrooms. They happen to be poisonous to other species. Not my fault your biology is fragile." The cafeteria went quiet. Several students gasped. Hyuk, who had been sitting 3 tables away, dimmed his light and tried to become invisible. Even the serving staff stopped moving. Taejin's colors shifted to bright red. Fragile. "The Nebula Confederacy has the most advanced biochemistry in known space. We can process any compound, survive in any chemical environment, and adapt to substances that would destroy lesser species in seconds." "Okay," Ji-won said, going back to her paste. "Good for you." "I propose a test," Taejin declared loudly, making sure everyone in the cafeteria could hear. "A competition to determine whose biology is truly superior. We shall both consume various toxic substances in controlled conditions and see who can withstand more. Unless you are afraid?" Ji-won looked up at the swirling gas being. She should probably say no. She should be smart about this and walk away. But she had never been good at walking away from challenges, especially when someone was acting superior. Her grandmother had always said pride was her worst quality. "Sure," Ji-won said. "Let's do it." Professor Velthar was not happy about the competition. He expressed this by turning several shades of gray and making gurgling sounds for 5 straight minutes. But once the challenge was official, there was no backing out. The station's rules allowed for academic competitions between students, as long as they were supervised and had proper safety measures. The toxicology laboratory was prepared for the event. Medical teams were on standby. Containment fields were tested and retested. Emergency equipment was positioned around the room. Dr. Nara personally oversaw the setup, her feathers showing a mixture of professional interest and personal concern. A crowd gathered to watch, students pressed against the observation windows, their various faces and forms creating a mosaic of alien features. Some had come to support their favored contestant. Others just wanted to see what would happen. A few were there hoping to witness a dramatic medical emergency. Ji-won and Taijin stood on opposite sides of a transparent barrier. Between them was a table with a series of sealed containers, each one holding a different toxic substance. The containers were labeled with symbols indicating their danger levels. Professor Velthar stood in the center, looking miserable. I want it clearly stated that I advised against this competition. The administration is only allowing it because both participants signed extensive liability waivers. "Just start the test," Taijin said impatiently. His colors swirled faster, showing his confidence. "Very well." The professor gestured to the first container. "We will begin with Compound 7 Alpha, a mild neurotoxin from the Viridian swamps. It causes temporary paralysis in most species. The dose has been calibrated to sublethal levels." A robotic arm delivered small vials to each contestant. Ji-won picked up hers and examined the purple liquid inside. It smelled like vinegar mixed with something rotten. "On my mark," Professor Velthar said. 3, 2, 1, consume." Ji-won drank the vial. It tasted as bad as it smelled, burning her throat on the way down. She felt a slight tingling in her fingers and toes, but nothing serious. Across from her, Taijin absorbed his dose directly into his gaseous form. His colors flickered briefly, then stabilized. "Both contestants show normal reactions," Dr. Nara announced, reading from her scanner. Proceeding to Compound 12 Beta. The next substance was a bright green powder that had to be mixed with water. According to the label, it caused severe digestive distress in most carbon-based life. Ji-won mixed hers and drank it quickly, trying not to taste it. Her stomach cramped slightly, but nothing worse than the time she had eaten bad street food in Bangkok. Taijin processed his dose just as easily. "Is this the best you have? These are barely toxins at all." Professor Velthar's expression suggested he disagreed strongly, but he moved them to the next level. Compound 18 Gamma was a thick black liquid that looked like oil. The label warned it could cause organ failure if not treated immediately. The room went quiet as both contestants prepared to consume it. Ji-won swallowed hers in one gulp. It coated her mouth and throat, leaving a metallic aftertaste that made her want to spit. Her vision blurred for a moment, and she felt her heart rate increase. But her body quickly adapted, her liver working overtime to break down the toxins. Within 30 seconds, she felt almost normal. Taijin absorbed his dose, and his colors immediately started to dim. His form became less cohesive, parts of him spreading out before pulling back together. He was struggling, though trying not to show it. Proceeding to Compound 24 Delta, Professor Velthar announced, sounding worried. This substance was different. It was a gas, contained in small inhalers. Both contestants would breathe it in. The compound attacked respiratory systems, causing cells to break down and preventing oxygen absorption. It was one step below lethal. Ji-won took a deep breath and inhaled from the device. Her lungs immediately felt like they were on fire. She coughed hard, her eyes watering. Her body fought against the toxin, her cells repairing damage almost as fast as it occurred. It hurt, but she had experienced worse. The time she got pepper spray in her eyes during a campus security demonstration had been more painful. Taijin inhaled his dose and immediately began to disperse. His gaseous form spread out, losing cohesion. His colors faded to almost nothing. Dr. Nara rushed forward with medical equipment, reading his vital signs through specialized sensors. "Contestant Taijin is experiencing severe toxin reaction," she announced. initiating emergency protocols. A containment field activated around Taejin, pumping in neutralizing agents to counteract the poison. His form slowly pulled back together, regaining some color, but he was clearly in distress. The medical team moved in, administering treatments through specialized equipment designed for gas-based life forms. Jiwon stood waiting, her breathing returning to normal. The fire in her lungs had already faded to a dull ache. "We have one more test," Professor Velthar said quietly. "But perhaps we should stop here." "No!" Taejin's voice came weakly from his speaker. "One more. I can handle one more." "The final substance is from Earth itself," the professor said, looking at Jiwon. "It was added to our catalog recently, a compound called capsaicin, extracted from something called ghost peppers. It is classified as a Class 3 chemical irritant." A small vial of red liquid was brought out. The container had warning labels in 12 languages. Jiwon recognized it immediately. It was essentially super-concentrated hot sauce, the kind that required you to sign a waiver before trying it at restaurants. "This seems unfair," Jiwon said. "This is from my world. My species evolved to handle it." "All tests must be completed," Taejin insisted, his pride overriding his common sense. The robotic arm delivered the vials. The dose was tiny, just a few drops. On Earth, this amount would be enough to make most people cry and regret their life choices. Here in the lab, it was classified as a weapon. Professor Velthar counted down. Jiwon took her dose, and the familiar burns spread through her mouth and throat. It was intense, making her eyes water and her nose run. But she had eaten spicier food before. Her friend Minho, back on Earth, grew Carolina Reapers in his garden and made soup with them. This was mild compared to that. Taejin absorbed his dose, and the reaction was immediate and catastrophic. His entire form turned bright red, then purple, then began to break apart completely. Alarms went off as his vital signs crashed. The medical team swarmed around him, pumping neutralizing agents and stabilizing compounds into his containment field. "Emergency stasis required!" Dr. Nara shouted. "Get him to medical bay immediately!" The containment field became a portable unit, sealing Taejin inside with life support systems. The medical team rushed him out of the laboratory, leaving behind a shocked crowd. Jiwon stood alone in the testing area, wiping tears from her eyes. "Does anyone have milk?" she asked. "Milk helps with the burning. Would have stopped." Jiwon looked at the small purple fragment in her hand and then at the holographic image still floating above the professor's desk. She tilted her head, comparing them. They did look similar, very similar. Exactly the same, actually. "Oh," she said. "Well, I feel fine." Then she ate the piece she had been holding just to prove her point. Professor Velthar's legs gave out, and he collapsed into his chair, all the color draining from his face. 3 days after the competition, Taejin was released from the medical bay. His gaseous form had fully recovered, though his colors were duller than before. He avoided Jiwon in the corridors and never spoke about the competition. Word spread quickly that the human had defeated one of the Nebula Confederacy's best students in a test of toxin resistance. Professor Velthar decided to use the incident as a teaching opportunity. He announced a special seminar series titled Comparative Biology of Death World Species, with a focus on humans and Earth. The lecture hall was booked to capacity within hours. Students from every department wanted to attend. Even faculty members showed up, curious to learn more about the humans who could eat poison like snacks. Jiwon sat in the front row, feeling slightly uncomfortable with all the attention. Next to her was Hyuk, who had become braver about sitting near her after she proved she was not going to randomly explode or leak toxins. Bitna had also returned, though she kept one set of eyes on the exits at all times. Professor Velthar dimmed the lights and activated his holographic displays. The first image showed Earth from space, a blue and green marble floating in the darkness. It looked peaceful and beautiful. "This is Earth," the professor began, "homeworld of the human species. At first glance, it appears to be a standard Class M planet with adequate water, breathable atmosphere, and moderate temperatures. However, appearances can be deceiving." The image zoomed in, showing different regions of the planet. Dense jungles, vast deserts, frozen tundras, and deep oceans appeared on the screen. Earth is classified as a Death World Category 9 because it possesses extreme environmental diversity. The planet experiences dramatic temperature variations, ranging from minus 90 degrees to plus 58 degrees Celsius. Most species require specialized equipment to survive in even one of these environments. Humans can adapt to all of them. A student in the back raised a tentacle to ask a question. It was Minseo, an aquatic being who lived in a mobile water tank. "How is that possible? Adaptation takes millions of years of evolution." "Humans do not rely solely on biological adaptation," Professor Velthar explained. "They use tools, clothing, and shelter to modify their environment. But their biological tolerance is also remarkably broad. They can survive in conditions that would kill most species within hours." The next hologram showed Earth's food chain. It was complex and violent, with predators hunting prey, prey defending themselves with toxins and weapons, and everything trying to kill everything else. "Earth's ecosystem is characterized by aggressive evolution," the professor continued. "Nearly every plant has developed chemical defenses. Animals have evolved venom, claws, teeth, and armor. Even the microorganisms are hostile. Humans exist at the top of this food chain not because they are the strongest or fastest, but because they are the most adaptable and intelligent." Dr. Nara stepped forward to add her medical perspective. Her feathers were a calm blue color today, showing professional interest rather than alarm. "I have spent the past several days studying human biology in detail," she said. "The results are fascinating. Humans possess one of the most aggressive immune systems in known space. Their bodies can identify and fight off thousands of different pathogens. They can survive infections that would be instantly lethal to most species." A holographic image of human internal organs appeared, rotating slowly to show every detail. "The human liver is particularly interesting," Dr. Nara continued. "It functions as a biological filtration system capable of breaking down an enormous variety of toxic compounds. Humans can consume substances that other species would consider poison, and their livers simply process these substances as if they were normal food." "Is this because of their Death World environment?" someone asked. "Partially," Dr. Nara confirmed, "but there is more to it. Humans are what we call persistence predators. They evolved to hunt by chasing prey over long distances until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. This required exceptional endurance and the ability to regulate body temperature through sweating. It also required the ability to consume a wide variety of foods because persistent hunters cannot afford to be picky eaters." The hologram changed to show early humans hunting a large animal across a plain. They did not run fast, but they kept going, hour after hour, never stopping. Eventually, the prey animal collapsed, and the humans moved in. This hunting strategy shaped human evolution in profound ways, Professor Velthar said. They developed the ability to eat almost anything because they never knew what food would be available. They developed strong social bonds because hunting in groups was more effective. And they developed problem-solving intelligence because they needed to track prey, predict behavior, and plan ahead. Jiwan felt strange watching holograms of her ancestors. She had never thought about humans as being special or unusual. To her, everything about human biology was just normal. It was weird learning that other species found humans so strange. "Let us discuss human diet in more detail," Professor Velthar said, bringing up a new display. It showed a long list of foods that humans commonly consumed. The list included items marked with warning symbols, danger ratings, and toxicity classifications. Humans regularly consume plants from the capsicum family, which produce capsaicin as a defense against being eaten. The compound causes pain and inflammation in most species. Humans not only tolerate this compound, they actively seek out plants with higher concentrations of it. They call this spicy food and consider it enjoyable. Bitna's clicking started up again. They enjoy pain? Apparently, the professor confirmed. They also consume caffeine, which is a plant-produced pesticide designed to kill insects. Humans drink it every morning in a beverage called coffee. The caffeine stimulates their nervous system and helps them wake up. The dose they typically consume would cause heart failure in most species. The list continued. Chocolate contained theobromine, toxic to many animals. Alcohol was a solvent that humans drank for entertainment. Onions and garlic contained compounds that destroyed red blood cells in most species, but humans ate them for flavor. The list went on and on. How are they not extinct? Doyon asked, his tail twitching with confusion. Because they are incredibly resilient, Dr. Nara answered. Human bodies are designed to survive. They can heal from injuries that would be fatal to others. They can function with damaged organs. They can even survive for weeks without food and days without water. Their will to survive is remarkable. A new student entered the lecture hall. He was human, recently arrived on the station. His name was Minho, and he looked confused about why everyone was staring at him as he found a seat. "Ah, excellent timing," Professor Velthar said. "Student Minho, would you mind participating in a demonstration?" Minho looked nervous, but agreed. He walked to the front of the room, giving Jiwon a questioning look. She shrugged to show she did not know what was happening either. "Student Minho, I understand you brought food items from Earth?" the professor asked. "Yes, sir. My parents sent me a care package. The station food is—" Minho paused, looking for a polite word. "Not great. Would you be willing to share some items with the class? For educational purposes?" Minho brightened. "Sure, I was going to share with Jiwon anyway. I have kimchi, instant coffee, and some hot sauce that my grandmother makes. She grows the peppers herself." The professor's skin went slightly pale, but he maintained his composure. "Excellent. Let us begin with the kimchi." Minho pulled out a sealed container from his bag. When he opened it, a strong smell filled the lecture hall. It was the distinctive scent of fermented vegetables, spicy and pungent. The alien students reacted immediately. Some covered their breathing apparatus. Others moved back in their seats. One student actually left the room. "What is that smell?" Hayek asked, his crystalline body flickering. "Kimchi," Jiwon said happily. "It's delicious. Fermented cabbage with chili peppers, garlic, ginger, and other spices." "Fermented?" Bitna's clicking intensified. "You eat rotted plants?" "It's not rotted, it's fermented. There is a difference." Minho took out a small portion and ate it with obvious enjoyment. "Humans have been eating fermented foods for thousands of years. It is very healthy, good for digestion." Professor Velthar scanned the kimchi with a handheld device. The readings made him blink all three of his eyelids in sequence. "This food contains high levels of capsaicin, multiple sulfur compounds, and millions of bacteria per gram." "Good bacteria," Minho corrected. "Probiotics. They help our digestive system." "You intentionally consume bacteria?" Dr. Nara's feathers went orange with surprise. "Sure. Yogurt, cheese, pickles, sauerkraut, lots of foods have beneficial bacteria." Minho offered the container to Jiwon, who took a portion and ate it gratefully. She had missed Korean food so much. The next item was instant coffee. Minho prepared a cup using hot water from a dispenser. The smell of coffee filled the air, and several students backed away as if he had released poison gas. "This is coffee," Minho explained. "Most humans drink it every day. It contains caffeine, which helps us stay awake and alert." Professor Velthar scanned the coffee. The caffeine concentration in this beverage would cause cardiac arrest in 70% of known species. Really? Minho took a sip. Tastes kinda weak to me. I usually make it stronger. The final item was the hot sauce. Minho's grandmother had made it from peppers she grew in her garden. The sauce was a deep red color and looked innocent enough in its small bottle. This is very spicy, Minho warned. Even for humans. My grandmother won a competition with this recipe. He put a single drop on his finger and tasted it. His eyes watered immediately, and he smiled. Perfect. Just like I remember. Professor Velthar refused to scan it. I can already tell from the chemical signatures in the air that this substance is dangerous. Please seal it before someone gets hurt. Minho capped the bottle and handed it to Ji-Wan. For you. I know the station food is terrible. Ji-Wan accepted it like he had given her gold. Thank you so much. I have been craving spicy food for months. The lecture continued for another hour, with Professor Velthar explaining more details about human biology, evolution, and culture. By the end, the alien students had a new appreciation for just how unusual humans were. They came from a world that was actively trying to kill everything on it, and they had not just survived, but had thrived. They had learned to eat the poison, drink the solvents, and enjoy the things that caused pain. After class, students gathered around Ji-Wan and Minho, asking questions and examining the earth foods with a mixture of fear and fascination. Hayuk asked if he could try the coffee, but Dr. Nara quickly intervened and said absolutely not. Walking back to their dormitories, Ji-Wan and Minho shared the kimchi and talked about home. They missed Earth, missed the food and the familiar dangers, but they also appreciated being in space, learning about the galaxy and meeting alien species. Do you think they will ever understand us? Minho asked. Ji-Wan thought about it. Maybe not completely, but they are trying, and that is what matters. Above them, through the transparent ceiling of the corridor, the stars shone bright and endless. Somewhere out there was Earth, their beautiful, dangerous, poison-filled home. And somehow, that made them smile. 6 months passed since the mushroom incident. The Interstellar Biology Institute had changed in small but significant ways. The cafeteria now had a special section for human food, sealed behind transparent barriers with warning labels. Students could watch Ji-Wan and Minho eat their meals like they were observing dangerous animals at a zoo. The humans found it funny at first, but eventually got used to it. Professor Velthar had become something of an expert on human biology. His paper titled Redefining Toxicity Through the Human Perspective was gaining attention across the galactic academic community. Universities were requesting copies. Scientific journals wanted to publish it. The professor had even received an invitation to present at the Grand Biological Symposium on Centauri Prime. The paper argued that toxicity was not an absolute concept, but a relative one that depended on the biology of each species. What was deadly to one species might be harmless or even beneficial to another. This seemed obvious to humans, but was apparently a revolutionary idea to the rest of the galaxy. Ji-Wan had been asked to assist with the research. She spent hours in the laboratory with Professor Velthar, testing her reactions to various substances while Dr. Nara monitored her vital signs. They discovered that humans could tolerate an incredible range of compounds. Things that should have killed her just made her feel slightly uncomfortable. How does your species even exist? Professor Velthar asked one day, watching Ji-Wan consume a substance that was classified as a Class 4 toxic waste product. She made a face because it tasted like old socks, but otherwise showed no ill effects. Evolution, Ji-Wan said simply. Earth kept trying to kill us, so we adapted. Any humans who could not handle the toxins died out. The ones who could survive passed on their genes. After a few million years, you get us. But the psychological aspect, the professor pressed. You do not fear these substances. You actively seek them out. Why? Ji-won thought about it. I guess we learned that the things that try to kill us can often be useful. Poison can be medicine in the right dose. Dangerous animals can be tamed and become helpful. Even fire, which destroys everything it touches, can be controlled and used for cooking and warmth. We do not see danger as something to avoid completely. We see it as something to understand and use. Professor Velthar made notes on his data pad. His skin color shifted through several shades of blue, indicating deep thought. This explains much about human behavior and technology. You take risks that other species would never consider. The station's gardens had expanded to include a special Earth section. It was kept in a sealed biodome with its own atmosphere and climate controls. Inside grew plants from Earth, everything from tomatoes to poison ivy. The botany department studied them with the same caution that weapons experts studied explosives. Ji-won volunteered to maintain the garden. She liked working with familiar plants, and it made her feel closer to home. Today she was pruning a chili pepper plant that was producing pods so hot that they required warning labels. Beside her worked Bitna, who had overcome her fear enough to help, though she wore full protective gear. I still do not understand why you grow plants that cause pain, Bitna said through her suit's speaker. Her mandibles clicked softly, showing her continued confusion. Because pain is not always bad, Ji-won explained, carefully picking a ripe pepper. This pepper hurts when you eat it, yes, but the pain triggers your body to release endorphins, which make you feel good. So you get pain followed by pleasure. It is interesting. Your species has a strange relationship with suffering, Bitna observed. Maybe. Or maybe we just understand that life involves some suffering. So we might as well find ways to make it interesting. Ji-won placed the pepper in a sealed container marked with biohazard symbols. Want to try a tiny piece? I can cut it very small. Absolutely not, Bitna said firmly, backing away until she hit the biodome wall. More human students had arrived at the Institute over the past months. Earth was starting to send more people into space as their technology improved. The new students brought more food, more culture, and more confusion for the alien species trying to understand them. There was Yunji, who practiced something called martial arts in the station's gym. Other species watched in horror as she deliberately struck hard surfaces with her hands and feet, building calluses and strength through repeated minor injuries. The concept of hurting yourself to become stronger was deeply disturbing to most aliens. There was Junho, who had brought a collection of Earth music. The music included something called heavy metal, which featured aggressive sounds that most species found physically painful to hear. Junho listened to it while studying and said it helped him concentrate. The station had to install special sound dampening in his quarters. There was Sora, who was studying to become a doctor. She showed the medical staff pictures of human anatomy and explained various injuries that humans could survive. Broken bones, blood loss, organ damage. Things that would kill most species were merely temporary setbacks for humans. Dr. Nara had to sit down several times during these presentations. The alien students began to develop a new perspective on humans. They were no longer just the strange species from the death world. They were people with their own culture, history, and way of seeing the universe. They were tough, certainly, but also kind. They were adaptable, but also loyal to their friends. They could eat poison, but also appreciated good food. Hyuk had become good friends with Ji-won. His species did not have the same concept of friendship that humans did, but he enjoyed spending time with her. She taught him about Earth, and he taught her about his crystalline home world where beings communicated through light and sound waves. "Do you miss Earth?" Hyuk asked one day as they studied together in the library. "Every day," Ji-won admitted. "I miss the smell of rain on pavement. I miss real sunlight, not artificial station lighting. I miss my family and friends, but I also love being here. learning about the galaxy and meeting people like you. People like me? Hayek's crystal structure resonated with curiosity. People who are different but also the same. We all want to learn and grow and understand the universe better. That is something we share, no matter what biology we have. Yuck considered this. His species did not have the same emotional range as humans, but he understood the concept. You humans have a phrase, I believe, about how differences make life interesting. Variety is the spice of life, Jiwon said, smiling. Yes. Though given your relationship with spices, I am not sure that metaphor means the same thing for humans as for other species. They both laughed at that. Professor Velthar announced that he was organizing a field trip. The class would visit a nearby moon that had been terraformed by an ancient civilization. The moon now had a diverse ecosystem with plants and animals from dozens of different worlds. It was considered a biological marvel and an excellent place to study adaptive evolution. The human students were excited. Finally, a chance to leave the station and see something new. The alien students were more cautious, especially after learning that the moon's ecosystem included several species from Death World environments. On the day of the trip, everyone gathered in the docking bay. They wore environmental suits designed to protect them from the moon's various dangers. The human suits were lighter and less armored than the alien ones, because humans needed less protection. The shuttle ride took 2 hours. Through the viewports, they could see the moon growing larger. It was covered in purple and green vegetation, with oceans that sparkled in the light of the nearby star. It looked beautiful and peaceful. Remember, Professor Velthar announced over the shuttle's communication system, this moon contains organisms from multiple ecosystems. Some are dangerous. Stay with your assigned groups. Do not touch anything without permission. And humans, please do not eat anything you find. Jiwon and Minho exchanged glances and tried not to laugh. The professor had learned to give that specific warning after Minho had tried to taste a plant specimen during a laboratory session. The plant had been harmless to humans, but was classified as toxic waste by station regulations. They landed in a clearing surrounded by tall trees with silver bark and blue leaves. The air was breathable for most species, though some students needed supplemental atmosphere. The ground was covered in soft moss that felt like carpet underfoot. The class split into research groups. Jiwon was paired with Hyuk, Bitna, and Doyun. Their assignment was to study the local fungi and document any interesting species. Professor Velthar gave them scanners, sample containers, and a long list of safety protocols. They hiked through the forest, following a path marked by previous researchers. The ecosystem was strange and beautiful, with plants that glowed softly in the shadows and insects that sang in harmonious tones. It was like walking through an alien garden, which technically it was. Doyun spotted the first interesting fungus. It was growing on a fallen log with caps that were bright orange and covered in small bumps. He scanned it carefully, making sure to follow all safety procedures. According to the scanner, this produces a mild hallucinogenic compound, he reported. Common on several worlds, used medicinally by some species. Let me see, Ji-won said, kneeling to examine it more closely. The mushroom looked similar to chicken of the woods mushrooms from Earth. She wondered if it tasted the same. Do not even think about it, Bitna said, her clicking taking on a warning tone. She had learned to recognize that look on Ji-won's face. They continued their research, finding and cataloging 17 different fungal species. Some were beautiful, others were strange, and a few were actively trying to spread spores on anyone who came near. By the end of the afternoon, they had collected extensive data and samples. As the sun began to set, casting purple light through the blue leaves, the groups returned to the landing site. Everyone compared notes and shared their findings. It had been a successful trip, educational and safe. Professor Velthar stood before the class, looking pleased. His skin had taken on a healthy green color, showing his satisfaction. Excellent work today, students. You have all demonstrated proper field research techniques and respect for alien ecosystems. I am proud of your progress. Jiwan raised her hand. Professor, I have a question. Yes, student Jiwan. If we humans can tolerate so many toxins, does that mean we could potentially live on more worlds than most species? Like, could we colonize planets that other species cannot? The professor's expression became thoughtful. It was a question he had been considering himself. That is an excellent observation. Yes, theoretically, humans could survive on worlds that would be hostile to most other species. Your adaptability is one of your greatest strengths. So humans could spread throughout the galaxy, Hayuk said slowly, understanding the implications. If they choose to, Professor Velthar confirmed. Though I hope that if humans do spread to other worlds, they do so peacefully and with respect for existing ecosystems. We will try our best, Jiwan promised. Though knowing humans, we will probably try to eat the local wildlife first and ask questions later. Everyone laughed at that, even Professor Velthar, because after 6 months of studying humans, they all knew it was probably true.